Hello, everybody. It is about 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in East Tennessee on February 12th. It's a Wednesday night. I came across this article that was posted. It was in the German publication Der Spiegel, and it's about, well, let me show you the page of it. How Russia sees the world. So it's a cultural article, basically how Russians view the world since everything that's going on. The article was written by Mikhail Zygar, and he focuses on a blogger named Aliana Vladimirskaya. All right, I'm not going to try to pronounce that again, but Aliana Vladimirskaya. Okay, so I just want to run with you. It was in German, so I had to get a translation, but I'm just going to read it to you just so you get an idea. Okay, so well-known blogger Aliana Vladimirskaya described how she was having dinner in a trendy Moscow restaurant with a friend who told her that she was getting married. Her dress was from a Russian brand, and she was going on her honeymoon to the mountains of Siberia. The author then noted that she herself would spend her vacation in Ossetia. If you don't know Ossetia, that's southern Russia, just north of the country of Georgia, where only clothes made by Russian manufacturers, and we drink Russian champagne, and we eat Rostov steaks, noted Eliana. The friends note with pride that both of them, without discussing it, have been supporting Russian brands with their money since the Corona period. Vladimirskaya writes that she and her friend travel often. They certainly have the opportunity to dress in Western brands, but they consciously prefer Russian companies. Not out of charity, but because we really like them. The government and IMF claims that the country's economy actually grew by 4% in 2024. It is impossible to judge whether that is really true. My interlocutors list the evidence. Energy and raw materials continue to be sold abroad and bring in significant revenue. The money now stays in the country. Okay, say since the sanctions, the money stays in the country, right? Igor, whoever, doesn't put $100 million in a Swiss bank or a Belgian bank. Remember the $300 billion that were seized, okay, or frozen. All the money that they could get out came Russia. They don't put it in other countries' banks anymore. Okay, so that money is going to work inside Russia as investments, right? They're sitting in the banks. Banks have more money to loan, etc. And they're still exporting all their raw materials, manufactured goods, whatever, which is why their revenues have gone up and why they have actually reduced their debt, not deficit, debt, by $27 billion in 2024. At the same time, increasing payouts of people like certain pensioners, veterans by 9.5% going into this year. It still paid off debt, and revenues are up because revenues are about the same as what they were for raw materials like Gazprom and oil products, whatever. But the revenues are increasing to Russia off their normal taxes because the economy is growing. Now all profits are invested within the country. This was not the case before the war. The Russian economy is now heavily geared towards war. Many people in Russia see this as a positive thing. Old arms factories were idle, and many of Russia's provincial towns were economically cut off as a result. Yes, but they maintained them, by the way, which I didn't know. A lot of the Russian way is that they'll have like a small skeleton crew, 2-3 people just maintaining the factories for surge capacities. And a lot of these old Russian factories were huge, 2, 3, 4 times bigger than that of like you'd find in the West. So they would be only using part of them for certain things at a certain time, or they would use certain parts of the factory for different things at simultaneous times. Okay, but the parts that weren't being used, they can surge and have them. They don't have to worry about like building a new factory or upbeat. They can literally like within a week get it going. Okay. The revival of the arms sector has provided many people with jobs and redistributed the flow of money within Russia. Not only the big cities benefit from this, but also smaller towns. The withdrawal of many Western brands has been a great advantage for their smaller Russian competitors, especially in the retail and food industries. Shops, warehouses, and production facilities have left empty, have simply been taken over by Russian companies, which now have a huge and affluent market that relies almost exclusively on their, i.e., Russian products. Perfect example, if you saw pictures of the Moscow Mall 2-3 months after all these sanctions hit, where Legos was, and Starbucks, etc., they were empty. You go there now, it's Star Coffee. Basically, investors got involved, okay? A lot of the products that they needed were manufactured, the roots, they just changed ownership. But the difference is the profits now stay and get reinvested in Russia. Lego in Russia is now called Russian bricks. It's the same thing. I saw pictures of the store and everything. The most striking change in the boom in domestic tourism, according to official statistics, it has grown by 25% to the previous year. While most Russians used to travel almost exclusively to Moscow, St. Petersburg, or Sochi, completely new, previously little noticed regions are now becoming popular. Dagestan, Far East, and Murmansk region. These economic changes are accompanied by psychological changes. This is also evident in Aliana's post. The preservation of the previous standard of living and even its growth are accompanied by a feeling of resentment and increase in anti-Western sentiment. Of course, the withdrawal of Western brands from Russia was a shock, but it was even more painful to suddenly not be able to travel to Europe. In personal conversations, both business people, and cultural figures report that they consider the sanctions against Russia to be an insult, and they will no longer travel to the West on principle. Many Russians do not directly link this situation to the war. Rather, they believe that the sanctions unfairly punish the entire Russian population, but spare those who are actually responsible for the decisions. Many Russians are convinced that their former friends who emigrated to protest are collaborators. Many in Russia are following very closely the difficulties that their former compatriots face in emigration, outgoing from Russia. Problems with visas and residence permits, difficulties in learning the language, finding accommodation, schools, and health insurance. The everyday dramas of the emigrant serve as confirmation for those who stayed that it was the right decision not to leave. Russians are distancing themselves both from the West and from their former selves. Their resentment is growing, but their self-confidence is also growing. The process is now, unfortunately, shaping the psyche of a whole new generation of Russians. Now, that's true. I've heard from many people in broadcasts in Russia that there was always a sense of insecurity from the West. That's why they loved French, colognes and stuff and all these products from the West, because they just never, especially after the fall of communism, they never had that identity. And so what happened is while they had great products, they even had a manufacturing base, and believe me, it wasn't just like Lindsey Graham says, a gas station with nuclear arms. But what has happened is they, because of the resentment and because of the cut off access from the West and the revamping of the war production and the investments in by Russians, let's do it. And they've improved their relations with other nations in the world and just found other markets for their products while having to build up theirs. Now, one of the things about it, so people got to understand, they're there. They have 160 million people, roughly 150 million people. Okay. All the resources, all the manufacturing in the world, a million-man army, missiles, cruise missiles, Navy, submarine fleet. Okay. We push them into China's side. They have great relationship with India. Okay. There's no reason to have a conflict with Russia and pushing them to China's arms. That was one of the key things going back to Nixon. We didn't want Russia. We were able to keep communist Soviet Union and communist China separated. But the Biden administration was able to do in 1 year, push them right onto the arms of China. Okay. Russia's never going to be 100% European, but it is technically closer to the West. Their bloodlines than they are to anything in most of the rest of Asia. So to push them away is insane. That's why it's important to get this deal done and listen to the concerns of the Russian people and the government, because they've been consistent on it for 20 years. Okay. The other lesson here, by the way, that's why I'm all about now. Do it now, now, now. End the war now before relations could get sour. Something bad can go wrong. So, but the other lesson here is when it comes to America and America's first. It got richer because the money came back into the country. We have natural gas. We have oil. We have manufacturing capability. We have 350 million people versus 150 million people. We have rare earth minerals. We have iron ore, coal. We have engineering. We have universities, schools, infrastructure. We also have dominance in the Western Hemisphere of a lot of countries that can give us additional resources we have. So the more we invest here, the stronger we can make lives for our citizens and grow our nation. Just like Russia, when you factor in price parity, which is all that matters when it comes to your GDP, it is the largest economy in Europe. It had passed Germany last year, confirmed by the IMF and World Bank. And when you factor in debt, it's not even close. They're under 20% of their GDP for debt. Okay. So it just shows you that you need that this globalism crap for the squeeze profit out, whatever you can, is never good for your nation. It's only good for the governing elites who do that. And then they use that extra money and power to exert influence in those such governments and those institutions like NATO, European Union, etc. That's why this America First and populist movement taking place in Europe, not just here in MAGA, but with Vox in Spain and National Rally in France and AfD in Germany, saying we need our infrastructure. We need money invested here. Okay? Yes, global trade is good. I'm not saying that. But if you can do it yourself, do it yourself. It's best for your citizens. Trade for what you have an excess for what you have a lack of. And I mean that organically, not because you shut down your rare earth mineral mining. You know, if you get the same thing from like Mexico or El Salvador, especially now El Salvador with this great leader there, Bukele, it's fine because it's not that long of a supply chain. Okay, but you should have some here. Okay, but to have everything just shipped and stationed in China, how insane is that? So I just wanted to show you the psyche of the Russian people leading into these negotiations, what really has happened since the sanctions and the war began inside Russia. And I've seen videos and interviews galore reinforcing what's been said about that article. And I also wanted to show you how their experience that we should do some of the same similar things here. So I hope you liked this video. I hope you learned something. Please, if you liked it, please follow the channel, like and share the video. And you could follow me at X at PatriotPlanner1 and on Getter at Patriot Planner. All right? Have a great day, guys, and hopefully this peace deal gets done. Bye-bye.